Ava was gently placing Mia on the bed. She kissed her forehead lightly, whispering, her voice hoarse from exhaustion, yet still as soft as if she were holding the entire world in her arms. Ava, I'm sorry that your life has to start in cold, lonely corners like this, but at least tonight, you get to sleep in a bed. Logan stood silently by the door. He heard it all. Each whisper felt like a wound, cutting into something he'd always avoided. Responsibility, emotions, and the true meaning of becoming a man. He took a step back, but in that retreat, his heart moved a long way closer to her. If you too felt choked up by this moment, then you certainly can't miss the rest of the story. A cold millionaire stops his car in the middle of a heavy downpour and hands the keys to a mansion to a poor mother holding her child. But he never expected that moment would change all three of their lives forever. Leave a comment. If you were Logan, would you have stopped the car? Like this, if you believe that sometimes a small act can save a whole life. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow the next episodes of this story, where love, trust, and forgiveness find each other. On a rainy night, the story is just beginning. He had 3 hours to save an empire from collapse, but just 3 seconds to realize the most valuable thing in his life was being left behind in the rain. The downpour on Lexington Avenue came down in torrents, pounding like water drums on the pavement. Under the soft yellow streetlights, black umbrellas brushed past one another like the rushing tide, sweeping away hurried shoulders. Inside the luxurious leather-clad cabin, Logan Pierce undid his suit jacket, the pressure on his shoulders heavier than the clouds above the towering skyscrapers. There were only 3 hours left before the emergency meeting with the board of directors. Since the government imposed the new tariff package, Logan's electronics supply chain had seen costs rise by 37%. The Middle East partners were demanding to cancel the contracts early, and shareholders blamed him for not anticipating the worst-case scenario. Logan gripped the steering wheel tightly, staring at the red traffic light. He ignored the sound of the relentless rain on the roof or the cold droplets collecting on the windows. His eyes were glued to the PowerPoint graphs flashing through his mind. A staggering figure on the sidewalk suddenly broke his train of thought. Logan instinctively turned his head. A frail woman, clutching a child in her arms, was stumbling through the rain as if she no longer knew where she was going. Her wet hair clung to her face, and her legs wobbled as if she was about to fall. He was about to speed away when she tripped on a broken piece of brick on the sidewalk and collapsed. The child almost slipped from her hands. Logan slammed the brakes. The rain kept pouring. But in that moment, every sound seemed to vanish from Logan's mind. He turned on his hazard lights, opened the car door, and rushed toward the woman, trembling from the cold. She tried to shield the child with her own body, her eyes filled with panic and shame when she saw him approaching. "Are you okay?" Logan asked, his voice stiff but tinged with concern. The woman looked up, her lips blue from the cold. I'm fine. I just need to find somewhere dry for her to rest." Logan glanced at the child. She was a tiny girl, her face pale from the cold, her eyes shut tight as if she'd fallen asleep from exhaustion. Without waiting for more words, he extended his hand. "Get in the car. I can't let you and your baby freeze out here." She hesitated but nodded. Her steps were weak, and Logan had to help her into the back seat. He quickly slammed the door, returned to the driver's seat, and turned up the heater to maximum. The air inside the car was misty and silent. Logan glanced at the rearview mirror. The young woman was clutching the child tightly, her hands trembling, her gaze avoiding his. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Ava," she replied after a brief pause, "and this is my daughter, Mia." Logan nodded. Her name etched itself in his mind effortlessly, not because of the name itself, but because of the look in her eyes, tough yet desperate. He turned the steering wheel, veering off the main avenue. "Aren't you going to your meeting?" Ava asked quietly. Logan gave a wry smile. "I think they can wait a few hours, but you and your daughter can't." Logan's mansion was on the outskirts, about a 40-minute drive from the city center. It was a place few visited, quiet, modern, and then cold. It had only been used for VIP guests or weekend retreats, but it had never felt like home. When the car stopped in front of the gate, Ava looked up at the massive glass house reflecting the streetlights. She stood silently, her confusion and wariness evident. Logan opened the door and extended his hand. "You can rest here for now. I have a flight to catch, but I'll be back soon." Ava took the key from him, her hand still shaking. "I don't know what to say." "To thank you." "No need to thank me," Logan interrupted, his gaze distant. "Just survive. For both of you." Without waiting for more, Logan quickly walked back to his car and drove off without a second glance. Ava stood there, under the warm porch, holding her daughter, watching the car disappear into the thick rain. Inside the mansion, Ava stepped in, as if afraid she might break something. The polished wooden floors, the abstract paintings on the walls, everything was too clean, too cold, not hers. But when she placed Mia on the long sofa, she finally allowed herself to breathe. The little girl remained sound asleep, her lips moving involuntarily. Ava removed her wet coat and found towels and blankets in a corner cupboard. She wrapped Mia up and then looked around, as if unable to believe everything was real. The fireplace automatically flickered to life. The orange glow reflected on the glass walls, looking out into the flooded garden. Ava walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge. Inside there was milk, eggs, vegetables, and cold cuts. Her hand froze. She hadn't touched anything like this since losing her home. She had carried Mia out of the homeless shelter over a week ago. The last meal she had was a dry slice of bread and a spoiled banana. Her chest tightened. Ava turned on the stove, warmed the milk for her daughter, and fried a few eggs. She did each step like a ritual, slow, careful, not daring to make a mistake. The fragrant aroma filled the kitchen, overpowering the cold scent of memories. Mia woke up. The little girl rubbed her eyes, looked around, and then smiled when she saw her mother. Ava brought the bowl to her, feeding her spoonful by spoonful. The little one ate eagerly. Ava couldn't hold back her tears. After the meal, Ava bathed her daughter in the warm marble bathroom. She wrapped Mia in a soft towel and placed her on the second-floor bed. The room was larger than their old apartment combined. Ava sat beside her, stroking Mia's hair until the child drifted into a peaceful sleep. Outside, the rain still fell, but in that room, for the first time in months, Ava felt like she could breathe, without guilt or fear. She took a small object out of her backpack, a silver USB drive, the only thing she had kept from her past. Inside it, there was everything: excellent grades, a video of her saving lives at the clinic, recommendation letters from old professors. She stared at it for a while, not to prove anything, but to remind herself she had been someone of value, and she would be again, for Mia. Ava placed the USB on the bedside table and then lay down beside her daughter. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know who that man was or why he had done what he did. But, in the final moment before falling asleep, Ava whispered to herself, "If tomorrow is worse, at least today my daughter ate her fill, had a warm bath, and slept in clean sheets. As for me, I still believe, even if just a little, in the goodness of the world. A peaceful night can heal a shattered soul, but it can also bring fear, because one can grow too accustomed to living in the dark for too long." Ava woke up at midnight, not because of a noise, but because of an unsettling silence. The room remained softly dark, the thick curtains blocking out any light from the garden, but there was something that made her open her eyes. Mia was still sleeping soundly in her mother's arms, her cheeks flushed with warmth, her tiny hand resting on Ava's shoulder, as if the little girl knew her mother was still there. Ava gently turned over, stood up, and stepped out of bed. Her bare feet touched the soft, mist-like carpet. Ava had never walked in a room like this, where every surface was clean, fragrant, and free from any shouting. She walked down to the kitchen to get more water. Under the soft yellow light from the bar counter, Ava suddenly realized her hands had stopped trembling. When was the last time she felt safe? Perhaps it was that last night before the accident that took her parents, when the whole family still lived in the old apartment, filled with laughter. After that came days of draining every ounce of strength to study medicine, working extra shifts, and then collapsing. She didn't want to remember, but in that moment, standing still in front of the large window, looking out at the moonlit garden, memories rushed in like a tidal wave. 4 months ago, she was an outstanding medical student, called to the stage to receive a scholarship from the New York Medical Association. She thought she had touched her dream, but when her parents suddenly died in a gas explosion, everything fell apart like a line of falling dominoes. No more family, no more financial support, tuition and living expenses piled on her shoulders. She worked extra hours in the emergency room, attended lectures during the day with dark circles under her eyes and a body drained of energy. She still fought on, until she met Ryan. Ryan entered her life like a ray of light, warm, understanding, and a good listener. He worked in real estate, spoke politely, and seemed like the first kind person after her ordeal. Ava never expected that her own vulnerability would open the door to a heartless man. Ryan didn't need to break in. He just needed to be there, slowly taking control of her account, pushing her to drop out of school for health reasons. And then, one night, after draining her savings, he disappeared as if he had never existed. At that time, Ava was pregnant, and that was when she began her life as a wanderer with a child not yet born. She tightened her grip around the water glass. The sweet smell of the wood from the kitchen cabinet evoked a strange feeling, like a world she had once seen on a TV screen but never dared to dream of stepping into. There was something about Logan that kept Ava thinking about him. He didn't ask her too many questions, didn't look at her with pity. He just acted. He put her in the car, he gave her the keys, he left, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Ava smiled faintly. There was nothing natural about it for someone like her. The next morning, Ava woke up to sunlight streaming through the thick curtains. The room was still silent, but it was now the kind of quiet that comes with a truly peaceful morning, not the frightening silence of a shelter waiting room. Mia had already woken up. The little girl was playing with a teddy bear she had taken from the shelf in the room, giggling and whispering to it as if they had known each other for a long time. Ava smiled and sat down beside her. "Do you like it here?" she asked. Mia nodded, her face bright. "Mum, can we stay here again today?" The question caught Ava off guard. She didn't know. She didn't have the right to decide. This wasn't her home. She was just a lost person, saved by a stranger. She spent the entire morning tidying the kitchen, washing the bed linens, and folding everything that she and Mia had used. Ava knew what it felt like to be seen as a burden. She didn't want to leave any trace that would trouble Logan when he returned. After a light breakfast of toast and milk, Ava took Mia to the garden. The rain had stopped, and the dew still clung to the grass. The little girl skipped along the stone path, while Ava quietly watched her with a soft smile. It was a moment she would never forget. A peaceful day, a morning without tears, a time when her daughter could run freely on the grass without fear of being chased away. In the afternoon, Ava found a note stuck to the refrigerator. "The door is always open, the fridge is always full, you have the key." No signature, but she knew it was from Logan. The words were simple, but they made Ava sit quietly for several minutes. He didn't ask about her past, he didn't expect anything in return, and he didn't tie her down, and that's why she felt afraid. That evening, Ava wrote a letter. She placed it in the drawer of the table in the living room. The letter wasn't long, just a few lines. "I have nothing to repay you with. I can't stay long. But you've given my daughter a normal day, something I haven't been able to do for months. Thank you for doing what the rest of the world turned away from. If one day you need me to tell the truth, just ask." Ava didn't know why she wrote that last line. Maybe deep inside, she still believed he was the only one she could trust, even though they had only met once. As night fell, when Mia was asleep, Ava sat in the armchair looking out at the garden. She didn't turn on the lights. The darkness no longer seemed as frightening as before. It was peaceful, just like her heart now. She didn't know when Logan would return. She didn't know where she and Mia would go tomorrow. But tonight, here under this roof, Ava allowed herself to hope. Just a little. But enough to keep her going. Everyone has a past to hide, but some scars, even faded, still throb at the touch of a genuine glance. The sky in New York that day was unusually clear, as if no rain had ever fallen. But for Ava, that space above felt empty. Inside the quiet mansion, she sat at the breakfast table, gently spinning the white porcelain cup Logan had left the night before. Mia was giggling by the window where the early sunlight cast golden spots on the plush carpet. Ava looked at her daughter and then closed her eyes, exhaling deeply. She knew she couldn't stay here forever, but she also knew she had come too far to go back. Back then, Ava wore thick glasses, her hair always tied up neatly, and she carried a heavy stack of documents wherever she went. A final-year medical student, Latin by heritage, raised in a working-class neighborhood, she stood out not for her appearance, but for the unyielding look in her eyes. The professors admired her not for her grades, but for her spirit. A person willing to work night shifts in the emergency room and still maintain a top grade. Amid the stressful rotations and sleepless nights of studying, Ava met a teaching assistant, Ethan Morris. Ethan was 6 years older than her, calm, warm, and always watching her in silence. They had never been a couple, but Ethan was the first person to tell her, "You don't need to try to be someone else. Just being Ava, as you are, is enough to change the world." Ava didn't love him, but she trusted him. And that trust, the most valuable thing in Ava's life, was later used by someone else to destroy everything. A week after her parents died, Ethan left the university. He left a letter saying he had to suddenly transfer overseas for work. No farewell. No one could confirm where he had gone. Ava felt empty. But she didn't blame him. She had no time to grieve. The extra work, tuition fees, debts, and the overwhelming pain of loss consumed her thoughts. That was also when she met Ryan Dalton, the man with a confident smile and a well-fitted suit, as if he was born to conquer. He appeared at a charity event at the school, where Ava had been chosen to speak as a student. Ryan approached, inviting her for coffee afterward, claiming he wanted to sponsor scholarships for struggling students. Ava refused the first time, but the second and third times, Ryan persisted. He told her about his childhood struggles, how he rose through self-learning, and his success in real estate investment. His story was close enough to hers to make her lower her guard, and he entered her life like a hero. 3 months later, Ava moved in with him. Not because she loved him, but because she was too exhausted to refuse kindness. When someone reaches out just as you're about to sink, you grab hold, not because you believe, but because you have no other choice. At first, Ryan was considerate, polite. But as time passed, Ava began to feel controlled. Her schedule had to be reported. Their bank account was merged for easier management. He encouraged her to take a semester off to rest and plan for a new future. Ava fell, quietly, with no one knowing. Everyone thought she left school for personal reasons. Only she knew each day in that apartment was a new wound. Until she discovered she was pregnant. She hid it, planned to leave. But Ryan knew. He coldly laughed when she placed her suitcase by the door. "Did you think I wouldn't guess? The only thing I wanted from you was that scholarship money and that foolish gratitude. Don't expect me to take any responsibility, and don't think you'll ever go back to your old life. No one remembers a little Ava anymore." He slammed the door. Ava stood there, alone, in the freezing December cold of New York. No home, no money, no school. No one knew she had ever existed. A voice pulled her out of the memory. "Mom, the teddy bear fell," Mia yelled from the garden. Ava smiled and stepped out. The little girl was bent over picking up the teddy bear, sunlight scattering little flecks of light on her tangled brown hair. Ava sat down next to her, pulling the girl into her arms. "It's okay. I'll fix it if it's torn." Mia looked up. "Is the teddy bear like you?" Ava laughed. "Yes. I was torn too, but now I've been mended." In the afternoon, the iron gate creaked. Ava looked out from the second-floor balcony. Logan had returned. He said nothing, only nodded at her from afar. Ava returned the gesture. They didn't need words. Just their presence. Logan walked inside, looking around. He saw the house was tidy, the tablecloth pressed flat, the fridge still full. Everything was orderly, even more so than when he had left. He turned to Ava, who had just come down from upstairs. "Are you getting used to this place?" he asked. Ava slowly nodded. "Used to it, but I don't dare believe it's real." They were silent, until Mia ran down and rushed to hug Logan's legs. "Uncle, Mom says you're a superhero." Logan laughed, bending down to lift her. He couldn't remember the last time someone had called him a hero. Ava watched the scene. A vague feeling passed through her heart, not love, but something very close to the peace she had longed for. A few hours later, when Mia was asleep, Ava walked into the living room. Logan was sitting by the fireplace, the firelight casting a cool, pensive shadow on his face. "Have you ever been afraid of being deceived?" she asked. Logan looked up. "Yes, every time I sign a contract." "Then why trust me?" He stared at her, long enough that Ava had to turn away. "Because of your eyes that day. They were like, I've seen them in the mirror. When I lost my mother." Ava froze. "You don't have to tell me if you're not ready. I'm not demanding," Logan said quietly. But Ava nodded. "Maybe it's time for someone to know. Even if just one person. He once thought he didn't need anyone to be strong. But sometimes the one who makes you vulnerable is the one you can't afford to lose." Logan woke up before dawn. The faint light outside the window hadn't quite pierced through the thick curtains, but he was already sitting in the chair, his laptop open, reports piled high on the desk. The board meeting in the afternoon would decide the new import-export strategy after the shocking tariff policy. One small mistake, and the entire distribution plan to the Asian market would collapse. But for the first time, Logan's mind wasn't only consumed by numbers. Ava's gaze from the previous night, when she shared her life as if whispering to her own pain, still haunted him. A look that had been crushed but never completely shattered. And Mia's laughter as the little girl nestled into his arms, calling him Uncle Superhero. It echoed in Logan's head like a distant sound, a sound warm. The morning in the mansion felt strange to Logan. The kitchen smelled of toast. The sound of a spoon tapping against a bowl of milk echoed from the dining room. Mia ran around the sofa like a small whirlwind of happiness. Ava saw him coming down the stairs, a little hesitant. "I've cleaned the kitchen. I hope it doesn't bother you." Logan smiled and sat down. No one has ever made this place feel like a home, quite like this. They ate breakfast together. Not many words, just an unnamed peace. By midday, Logan had to head to the office. He left, leaving Ava and Mia behind. As he stepped out the gate, for the first time in years, he felt uneasy. At the office, Logan gave a 2-hour presentation to the board. He proposed moving the import center to Malaysia to avoid tariffs, renegotiating the air freight contracts instead of using sea transport to prevent inventory buildup, and cutting domestic marketing costs. The board nodded. The legal advisor nodded. The CFO nodded. But Logan didn't. He nodded. Out of duty. But his mind was elsewhere, where a woman with a lived-in gaze and a child who laughed with all her heart were. When he returned to the mansion late in the afternoon, Logan noticed something was off. The gate was open, the yard lights were on, but inside it was eerily quiet. He stepped inside. No laughter, no smell of food, no familiar sound of small footsteps. "Ava?" he called. No reply. A sense of worry tightened in his throat. He searched the ground floor, then went upstairs. When he reached the second-floor living room, he sighed in relief. Ava was sitting there, Mia asleep in her lap, a blanket draped over her. She looked up. Her eyes were red. "Were you crying?" Ava quickly wiped her eyes. "I'm fine, just tired." But Logan didn't believe her. He sat across from her. "What happened?" Ava was silent for a moment, then quietly spoke. "Someone came to the gate today. A woman. Very beautiful, very confident. She asked me who I was. Asked why I was here." Logan froze. He knew immediately who it was. "Sloan Harrington," Ava continued. "She said she was your long-time partner, and that she was also the one not easily replaced." Logan closed his eyes. Sloan wasn't a girlfriend, but she always thought of herself as having a special place, and clearly she was starting to feel that position slip away. I didn't respond. I just asked if I could come inside, but she looked at me like I was a stain. Ava clenched her fists. "I know I don't belong in this world. I know I'm just a guest here. But the way she looked at me, it reminded me of the looks from people who used to scorn my mother and me when we slept under the bridge." Logan said nothing. He stood up, walked over, and sat down next to Ava. "I'm sorry. You shouldn't have had to go through that, especially under my roof." Ava turned her face away. You don't need to apologize. This isn't your fault, it's mine. For letting myself believe that there could be a place called safe. No, Logan said, his voice low. That's not a fault, that's a right. That night, for the first time, Logan stayed up all night. He didn't work, he didn't review economic strategies. He just stared at the picture of his mother, the only woman who had ever told him, never judge anyone just because of where they come from. He remembered that saying, but over the years he had forgotten it. In his rush to become a successful man, a rush that made him forget his true feelings. That night, Logan knew he wasn't just protecting a woman who needed help. He was starting to fear losing her. It only takes a moment of doubt, and everything good can crumble like a sandcastle. It had been 5 days since Ava and Mia had moved into Logan's mansion. With each passing day, the invisible distance between them seemed to blur more. Logan had never asked Ava about her past, but that respectful silence was something Ava silently appreciated. That morning, Logan left the house early to prepare for a meeting with his strategic advisor. The pressure from the government's new tariff policy forced him to completely revise the import plan for the next quarter. But in his mind, his focus was divided by the images of Ava and Mia, the two people who had, for the first time, brought laughter into his home, the scent of real food and genuine life. Late afternoon. Ava had just finished feeding Mia when the doorbell rang. She stepped outside and found a delivery man, a stranger, who placed a thin envelope on the doorstep and left without a word. She hesitated for a moment before opening it. Inside were several loose photographs. Ava froze when she recognized the people in the photos. Logan and a beautiful, elegantly dressed woman. In one photo, they were standing close together in a hotel corridor. In another, Logan was bending down, his face nearly pressed to the woman's cheek. A third, the woman was smiling brightly in Logan's car. The angles were very clever. Logan's expressions were genuine, but the more Ava looked, the more something felt off. Some of the photos were cropped hastily, a few others had a strange blurred light around the edges, but the feeling in her chest still tightened. In the envelope was a small note, handwritten in purple ink. Are you sure you're the only one welcomed there? Ava looked at the photo again. Her eyes paused at the ring on the woman's finger. An old-style diamond ring, the kind only those with long-standing ties to the investment world would wear. She didn't need to guess. She knew exactly who the woman was. Sloan Harrington. Ava didn't say anything when Logan returned. She cleaned the kitchen, bathed Mia, and rocked her daughter to sleep, just as usual. But inside, everything was chaotic. Not because of jealousy, but because she began to ask herself, what am I here? What role do I play in this man's life? And if another day comes knocking at our door, will Mia and I be discarded without a word? That evening, Logan was in his office. Ava stepped in, holding the stack of photos. These arrived today, no name on them. Logan took them. His expression darkened. He recognized the familiarity. Sloan had used similar tactics to trap opponents. She knew how to manipulate the media, how to choose angles, how to construct a narrative. They aren't real, he murmured. Some might be moments she created to set me up, but most of them are fabricated. I can prove it. Ava didn't respond. She didn't cry. She just looked at him for a long while. I don't blame you, truly, but sometimes when someone has been through so much pain, they no longer have the strength to tell what's real and what's fake. Logan gripped the photos tightly. He didn't know what to do. Defending himself would only make Ava feel more distant, and silence would be like admitting guilt. Ava gently placed something on the table, a small USB drive. This contains everything I've ever had, my past, my records, my transcripts, and even recordings I kept to protect myself, just in case I ever get hurt again. She looked directly at him. If one day you want to know who I really am, truly who I am, then open it. But today I just need to be somewhere, where I don't have to constantly fear that I'm trespassing. Logan stood still as Ava walked out of the room. He held the small USB, small, yet holding the very soul of the girl before him. He knew if he didn't do anything, if he let the night pass like every other ordinary night, then tomorrow, Ava might not be here anymore. She didn't leave because she no longer loved. She left because she feared loving even more. The sky wasn't raining, but but the night was unusually cold. Ava sat alone on the doorstep, in front of the large glass door that led to the backyard. Inside, the golden lights from the living room cast faint, weak patches of light. In the palm of her hand was the USB, small, cold, just like her heart felt at that moment. She had handed it to Logan. But he said nothing. He didn't ask, didn't try to keep her, nor did he open it immediately. Ava didn't blame him. She understood. A man like Logan, accustomed to strategy, control, and logic, would need time to understand a woman from the darker side of society, with scars too many to quantify with numbers. But Ava no longer had time. She quietly climbed upstairs and entered the bedroom where Mia was peacefully asleep. The little girl was clutching the teddy bear Logan had given her, her tiny face hidden in soft brown hair, peaceful, trusting. Ava bit her lip. She sat on the edge of the bed. "Sweetheart, I'm sorry," she whispered, her lips trembling. "We have to go again. I don't know where we'll be welcomed next. But I will protect you, at any cost." She packed everything carefully, a small backpack, a few sets of clothes, a bottle of water, some dry biscuits, and the remaining USB, a backup just in case. Ava hid it deep in the bottom pocket of the bag, like a piece of evidence for the truth, in case she ever needed to clear her name. 2:47 a.m. Ava left the mansion. There was no sound. She moved quietly, step by step, holding Mia close. The little girl stirred, then settled back into sleep, her head resting on her mother's shoulder. The gate's automatic lights flickered on as she approached. She didn't look back. Just one glance, and she wouldn't be able to move. On the second floor, Logan sat in front of his computer screen. The black screen still hadn't opened the contents of the USB. He stared at the first file icon, Voice Mother 2017.wave, but his fingers couldn't click. He was afraid that knowing the truth would hurt more, afraid that if he understood everything, he would have no reason not to love her anymore. Suddenly, the door clicked shut. Logan jumped up and rushed to the balcony. A shadow of a small woman holding an even smaller form passed through the gate, disappearing into the night. He didn't have time to call out. Not because he didn't want to, but because something inside his chest had collapsed, heavier than any failed deal he had ever experienced. The next morning, the housekeeper knocked and found no sign of Ava. The bedroom was empty. The bed neatly made. The towel dried. Mia's blanket folded into a square, placed neatly on the pillow. Only a child's bracelet remained, a pink ribbon dangling from the wardrobe handle. Logan walked in and picked it up. He said nothing. Then he went back to his office. For the first time, he opened the USB. A voice played, "Mom, I'm hungry. Ava, you need to try harder. If not, they'll look down on you like they did your father. They kicked me out of the on-call room today. I'm sorry, sweetie." They were fragmented audio clips. A voice diary. Ava's late-night conversations with herself, recording as if afraid she would disappear from the world. Logan played them all, one by one, until the final line appeared. "If anyone is listening to this USB, then maybe I'm too tired to tell it all again. But if you're still listening, thank you for wanting to know the truth." Logan cried. For the first time in his life, he once thought he could control everything, until the truth was hidden from him, before he even had the chance to find it. Logan hadn't slept. For 3 nights after Ava left, he lived in the mansion like an empty shell. The lights still burned every evening. The gate still opened every morning. But there were no more small footsteps echoing in the hall, no more cheerful laughter from Mia or the subtle scent of cinnamon from the pastries Ava used to bake. The USB now sat beside his desk, like a sacred object. Logan had listened to everything inside it. Ava's trembling, determined, and sincere voice made him feel as though he had been thrust out of his comfort zone. She didn't demand anything. She never tried to keep him. And that was exactly why Logan couldn't bear the silence anymore. He decided he had to find her. Logan hired a private investigator, someone who had handled high-profile missing persons cases. With just a few basic details, the investigator began to track down records from the hospital where Ava had worked, her old medical school, even the temporary shelter where she had registered her name with Mia. But strangely, all records related to Ava were Vague. There were some, but they were incomplete. Some applications to her university had no student ID numbers. A few work reports from the clinic were missing. Some old addresses for Ava, when checked, led to residents who claimed no one named Ava had ever lived there. Even when the investigator traced her old social security number in the federal system, the response was, "Account has been closed upon the user's request, cannot retrieve." Logan frowned. A poor woman who used to sleep under a bridge, how could she possibly erase her tracks so thoroughly? The investigator quietly replied, "There are only two possibilities. One, she didn't do it. Someone else did. Two, she was being covered up by some force." Logan thought immediately of one name, Ryan Dalton, the man who had exploited Ava, the one who had pushed her into a deep pit. But why did he still have control over her records, even after all these years? By the end of the day, Logan received an anonymous email. No subject, no greeting, just one short line. "Stop searching. She chose to leave your life because she knew you couldn't handle the truth." And an attached photo, Ava holding Mia, walking out of a shelter in an old residential area in the Bronx. Her head was down, hair messy, holding her child, looking as if she were running away. Logan clenched his fists. Who took this photo? Who knew where Ava was but wouldn't tell him? And most importantly, who wanted him to give up? That night, Logan drove alone to the Bronx. He drove through the dark streets, scanning every sign of the shelters, asking every guard, every local, until an elderly black woman spoke up. "You're looking for the woman with the little kid, huh?" "Yeah. They're not here anymore. A guy with glasses, looked like a lawyer, came to talk to her. After that, she left." Logan immediately turned back to his car. Rage surged within him. He realized someone was trying to take control of Ava once again. But this time, he wouldn't let that happen. Not everyone who steps out of your life truly wants to leave. Some are just waiting for you to call them, with one sincere word. 3 days after Ava disappeared from the mansion, Logan finally received the address where she was staying from the investigator. He didn't give any warning. No calls, no texts. He simply took the USB she had left behind, along with a short handwritten letter he had never sent, and drove straight to the old neighborhood in the West Bronx. The neighborhood was eerily quiet. Logan walked up the creaky stairs and stopped in front of a faded door. He took a deep breath, knocked. Ava opened the door. For a moment, they both stood still. No one spoke. Her eyes were swollen, as if she hadn't slept in days. Her hair hastily tied, and Logan appeared before her for the first time without a suit, without his expensive watch. Just a man carrying his true heart. "I came here, not to say what you want to hear," Logan began, his voice low but steady. "I came because I don't want to be just a stop along the way in your journey, for both of you." Ava stared at him, without blinking. Logan pulled the letter from his jacket pocket and placed it in her hand. "You once asked if I believed in you. Now I want to say, I don't just believe. I want to stand by you, and Mia. No matter what your past is, no matter how hard the days ahead may be." He lowered his gaze to Mia, who was now standing behind her mother, looking up with wide, innocent eyes. "Uncle Logan, can I be your dad?" he asked softly, then turned back to Ava. "If you'll allow it," Ava cried. But she didn't turn away. She lifted Mia up, burying her face in the child's soft hair. "I've lived in fear for too long. Fear of being hurt, fear of not being worthy. But if you're sincere, then please take us in. Not with promises, but with actions." Logan nodded. "I don't need another chance. I need a lifetime to prove it." The three of them embraced in the small, old hallway. No fireworks, no background music playing. But for the first time, in Ava's heart, there was a feeling of having come home. Some people enter your life like rain, wet, unexpected, but stay like the sun, quietly warming you until the end. 3 months later, Logan's mansion was no longer the strategic headquarters filled with packed meeting schedules and cold, harsh lighting. Now, in the middle of the garden, there was a small white swing, where Mia often sat reading books or tying ribbons around her teddy bear's ears. Logan had changed too. He no longer appeared frequently on the covers of financial magazines. Instead, he stepped back, handing over the CEO position to a co-founder, while he became the honorary chairman and focused on a medical education development fund, one that Ava had proposed to establish. Ava, too, had changed. She was no longer the woman who bowed her head walking in the rain. She had returned to medicine, but in a different way. She didn't work in a prestigious hospital. Instead, she worked at a community health center funded by Logan, providing free treatment for single mothers and homeless children. She didn't use her old name, but she no longer hid. One Sunday morning, the three of them sat under the bougainvillea arbor in the backyard. Logan was reading a book, Ava was making tea, and Mia was doodling on a piece of paper. The little girl looked up and innocently asked, "Mom, we're a real family now, right?" Ava turned to look at Logan. He didn't answer Mia, he just took her hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. "Not just real," Ava smiled, "but forever." Mia giggled, then she stood up, running to hug both of them. Outside, the sunlight streamed through the leaves, as gentle as an embrace from fate, for those who had once fallen but never gave up on believing in kindness. Some storms may seem like disasters, but they are actually the beginning of a miracle. Some people appear when we've hit rock bottom and unexpectedly give us a reason to rise again. The story of Logan, Ava, and Mia is not just about love, it's also about trust, forgiveness, and the courage to give each other another chance. Because sometimes the most valuable thing in life isn't what we have, but the person who dares to stay with us even when we have nothing left. If you've ever gone through a storm in your life, believe that the sun is still somewhere, you just haven't seen it yet. And who knows? A door may have quietly opened, just waiting for you to be brave enough to walk through. Leave a comment below sharing what touched you the most in this story. Like this, if you believe that everyone deserves a place called home. Subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next touching stories. And if you know someone who needs a spark of hope, share this video with them. Thank you for your company. See you again in the next stories, where emotions always find their way back.